In this video, I am going to look at a game I played a couple of Saturdays ago in a county match against Middlesex. The match was played at the Sussex home venue in Hassocks. I was on board 5. I had the white pieces and was up against Harry Bryant, a strong junior player. I started with e4 and play went into the knight off after c5, knight f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, a6. Here I chose f3. I aimed for the English attack via this move order because bishop e3 can be met by knight g4, which seems to be in excellent theoretical shape nowadays. After f3, black decided on the typical knight-off response with e5, knight b3, bishop e6, and after bishop e3, h5. This is the fashionable way to meet the English attack. Black prevents g4, which is a standard part of white's attacking scheme. This means that white has to find other ways of putting pressure on black. Bishop e2, knight on b to d7, f4. White aims to take advantage of the bishop on e6 lacking squares in order to fight for the control of d5. Queen c7. Black prepares to move the bishop to c4 if necessary. f5. This is natural, but white's pieces are not well placed to exploit the resulting weakness of the d5 square at the moment. Perhaps white should have played h3, looking to bring his pieces to better squares before playing f5. After f5, play went bishop c4, bishop takes c4, queen takes c4, queen f3, b5. Black threatens b4, driving away the knight, so white prevents this with a3. Play went bishop e7, knight d2. White would like to direct this knight towards d5 via f1 and e3, although that is rather time-consuming. Play went queen c6, h3, knight b6, bishop g5. White looks to eliminate one of black's pieces covering d5, although giving up his dark-squared bishop does entail a certain risk. Play went rook c8, castles, a5. Black sensibly looks to play b4 with strong counterplay. Knight g4 was a sharp alternative. Bishop takes e7, queen c5 check is the point as the white king is forced to h1. After king takes e7, white cannot take the knight because of the nasty discovered check. H takes g4, h takes g4 check. And after rook on a to e1, knight f6, black is obviously fine. Anyway, after a5, play continued, bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6. And now worth considering was king h1. The point is that b4 doesn't work on account of a takes b4, a takes b4, knight d5, knight takes d5, e takes d5, queen takes c2, knight e4, and black is in obvious difficulties. Instead of b4, black should play bishop g5, when play could go rook on a to d1. Now, bishop takes d2, rook takes d2, knight c4 is tempting, but after rook d5, knight takes b2, knight takes b5, Black again is in obvious difficulties. Instead of taking on d2, he should just play f6 when his position looks solid enough. Anyway, instead of king h1, white went for queen e2, and black played b4, a takes b4, a takes b4. White now had to try knight d5, knight takes d5, e takes d5. When black has a choice of pawn captures, queen takes c2 is met by queen b5 check, king e7, knight b3, when black has to be careful. For instance, queen takes b3 leads to a lost position after queen b7 check, king d8, rook a6, bishop e7, rook c6. Instead of queen takes b3, queen c7 is more sensible, when white will continue knight a5, and now black should probably exchange queens with queen c5 check. After queen takes c5, rook takes c5 is a mistake on account of knight c6 check, king d7, rook a7 check, king c8, rook a8 check, which wins the rook on h8. Instead of rook takes c5, black should take with a pawn, d takes c5, but after knight c4, white has obvious compensation for the sacrificed pawn. Instead of taking on c2, black could play queen takes d5, but then again white will have compensation for his pawn after knight e4. However, white didn't choose this line, but instead went for knight b5, but this places the knight in danger. Black responded with castles. He correctly sees that knight a7 is not a threat. Knight a5, queen c5 check, king h1. Now, rook a8 transposes to a position later in the game where black is doing well. However, black evidently wanted to keep the rook on the c-file and so played rook c7. However, after knight b5, rook on c to c8, white should have gone for c3, when his knight is not in trouble and the pressure on the c-file is neutralised. However, he chose knight a7, hoping to repeat the position, but allowing black a second chance to move the rook to the correct square. Rook a8, which he takes. After knight b3, queen c4, white should have reconciled himself to queen takes c4, knight takes c4 with an inferior endgame, but he chose to keep in the middle game with queen f2, but this allowed queen c7. Now white has to worry both about his knight getting trapped and his weak pawns on e4 and b2. Play went knight b5, queen c6, knight a7, queen b7, knight b5, knight c4, knight a7, queen takes e4. Black wins a pawn. Rook on f to e1, queen d5, rook a6, queen b7, rook on e to a1, e4, queen e2, knight takes b2. Black wins a second pawn. Knight a5. White deploys his pieces to the queen side to rescue his knight, but his pawns are weak. Queen d5. Knight on 5 to c6. Queen takes f5. Black wins a third pawn, although white soon wins one back. However, black's central pawns are now strong. Rook on 1 to a5. d5. Knight takes b4. Rook on a to d8. Knight on a to c6. Rook d7. c4. This is something of a bluff. If black doesn't respond with the correct move, his advantage is considerably reduced, and white is back in the game. Knight takes c4. Black falls into white's trap, seeing that his e-pawn will be too strong. Queen takes c4. D takes c4. Rook takes f5. White has won a piece, but black has 3 pawns for it. In particular, his e-pawn is very strong. e3. Rook f1. e2. Rook e1. Rook d1. Knight c2. Bishop c3. Black wins further material. White struggled on, but soon had to admit defeat. King h2. Bishop takes e1. Knight takes e1. Rook takes e1. Rook a5. White hopes for knight e7 check, followed by rook takes h5 mate. But unfortunately, there is not a plausible reason black would allow that. Rook e8. Rook takes h5. Rook d1. Black is about to queen the pawn, so white resigned.